Welcome back to the podcast. We have Ed Hanko on today. So, just a little quick background. So, police detective turned entrepreneur turned business development, Ed. So, one, thanks for coming on. Thanks for agreeing to come on. Not everybody does.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, can you give me your 2 minute, real quick? We'll have questions behind it, but what's your 2 minute elevator pitch for your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, police officer out of college and did that for 21 years. I had done everything that I'd wanted to do: undercover, highway interdiction, underwater search and rescue,
Jeez.
bike team. So, just sort of ended up in the background section. And I was at home during COVID. And by happenstance, we were homeschooling at the same time. And I got to see for the first time, oh, this is what I'm missing when I hear the stories at the dinner table. So I just sort of started noodling on the idea of like what could be next, and discovered a school um, called Acton Academy, and dug into it. And I was like, oh man, this is the school I wish I went to. So pursued it and was selected. I have a pretty rigorous selection. You have to have a background of either really strong project management or entrepreneurship. So I had a real estate business that I ran for 10 years while I was a police officer, just sourcing off market properties in Maryland, and decided to close everything down and just head towards the school. So we ran that for a little bit over 2.5 years. And the dragon I ultimately couldn't slay was zoning. We were up against that battle every day. Civil engineer uncle who had walked us through everything and just ultimately realized, okay, we're pulling money out of the public education system, so it's an uphill battle. And um, I had retired from the police department, so I left a little bit early and had the school going. And we decided, what if we just closed down the school and just followed the school somewhere? So we looked from Virginia Beach to Kennebunkport, where there were schools in our network that were already existing, and came to Lancaster. Always thought it was Dutch Wonderland, hit some outlets and turn around and go home. Discovered there's like a little cool city here, and this is the place that won out. So I did some career coaching for about 9 months when I got here, and it was very like this, but I missed being in front of people, talking to people. That's what my whole career was. So I used the career coaching skills that I had been employing on myself, and landed at a local company, Moser Roofing Solutions, doing business development and roof consulting. So that's where I've been for about 7 months now. So
Okay. Yeah, this is such a fascinating. So as I was getting your questions together, it was such a fascinating. I mean, that is quite a transition. Obviously, not many probably go the same route. So you spent 21 years in the police, whether that be undercover, and I didn't know you did search and rescue and all that fun stuff. So then you transitioned into entrepreneurship, roofing, business development. What's the biggest mindset shift you had to make when moving from law enforcement to business?
I think the biggest one that's just returned true and true day in and day out is to, like, I think the catchy one now is like, do it scared. Like there's always going to be
Mm.
a reason. And while I was in the police department, uh, I think maybe year 8, I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. But you're in, and there's that whole theme of a golden prison where the door is always unlocked. You can leave at any time, but the idea of like, you got 8 years towards retirement. And so, I mean, if you asked most police officers, they could tell you how many days they have left till retirement because they're all looking to get out. Um, so I think what I took in doing my business and starting the school is like, there's never a right time. There's never a time that's like, this is the day to do it. Um, and really, through doing the school, one family motto that we've adopted um, is the idea of when you do hard things, you receive big, beautiful gifts. You just don't know
Mm.
what they'll be or when they'll come. So you just simply have to trust. And moving to a state with no family, no jobs, no connections, we just leaned into it. And a lot of times we're building the plane while we fly it, but it just continually works when you trust. So
Yeah. I resonate with that big time, especially stepping into the role that I stepped in for SWF because I had no major leadership experience, knew nothing about manufacturing. And you're so right. I think somebody was talking to me about like being ready for leadership in the company, and I said like if you wait for like just like you said, if you wait for the time that you'll be ready, it'll never come, and like that next big step is always scary, and I don't think you ever think you're ready,
Yeah.
for that to
Yeah.
fill that potential bucket. So yeah, that really resonates because it is so true. You sometimes just got to take that leap and figure it out.
Yeah. The driving force behind most of what I do is just imperfect action. And if I take enough imperfect action, it'll yield amazing dividends. I've just seen that time and time again.
Are you pretty okay with risk as an individual?
It's I think my like everyone's got their background and their story, right? I think my little T trauma was always money, and so you can imagine I'm in a police department. I've got this guaranteed pension. If I just stay long enough, if I'm just miserable long enough, then I can retire, and then I have this money that comes in. So one of the things that I I sort of backed myself into and like I painted myself into a corner like purposefully. It was subconscious, but it's just the idea of like taking the risk. And I used to really shy away from risky financial decisions. And now, you know, we, I, I'm starting a career over at 46 in a business that I have never done before. I've never had a formal sales position. So it's just, it goes back to that trust and just leaning into the risk and saying like, yes, there's risk, but there's also the risk on the other side too by staying comfortable. And I think
Mm-hmm.
stepping out of that comfort zone has been so much more productive for me. And 99.9% of the time, it's up here that keeps you from stepping out. It's not a family member or a spouse. It's just your own personal, well, what will they think or what will they say? Then when you really define who they are, it sort of loses its power. I find a lot of help in journaling and writing things down and saying things out loud. So if you caught me on a ruck running around the neighborhood, you'd like see me talking to myself out loud. And I think there's just so much power when you voice it versus just let it ruminate in your head. So risk is just, yeah, it's just something to jump into with both feet.
That is the first time I've ever heard somebody say, when you actually define they, right? Because we all say they. I think that
Well,
is
yeah,
so brilliant because you're right. You're putting an actual, it's not this scary monster anymore.
right. Yeah, yeah. I took it. I think the first time I stumbled over it was shockingly in the police department. Maybe it was when Obama was about to be elected, and I kept hearing, it's a traditionally conservative outfit, right, in the police department. So they're going to take our guns. They said they're going to, you're going to have to register every single. And I was like, well, who's they? Well, they. And I'm like, well, I don't know if that's a person. Like, there's just this collective fear that exists, right? And so
Yeah.
when you name it and you take away its power, it's really it becomes really powerful to personally lean on.
Yeah, that's really, really good. I mean, that resonates even today in everything we're divided on, right? When you're talking
Right.
politics. Can you give
Absolutely.
me any stories, maybe three stories in the three different sectors you talk about, whether maybe like I don't even know what you call like a normal police officer versus undercover detective type scenario versus search and rescue. Like, do you remember three specific things that were like pretty profound in your life in those three different segments?
Yeah, my daughters love this story. I wasn't a giant ticket pers ticket police officers per se, but I loved using tickets to, find criminal activity. So find people that were doing things they shouldn't and use those opportunities to interact with them. But sometimes you just had regular police duties. And I had a buddy in the academy and we were working patrols, day work. We would go in the morning time to Giant. We'd grab peanuts, we'd grab cottage cheese, fruit, waters. We'd just sit on the side of a road that we were directed to sit to do radar. We'd set up the little radar thing, and you could hear the tone, so you would know if a car was coming speeding. We'd just sit there and eat peanuts and talk, and just have a good old time. And um, the first day we were out there, a van came through, and I waved him over. And I said, "Hey, you know why I'm stopping?" Oh yeah, I was probably speeding. Okay, well just slow it down. We're just out here. There's kids, it's school buses, that kind of thing. So just be cool about it. All right, thanks. It's like the next day, same routine. Got him again, and so he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry, man. You just told me yesterday. This is my lesson I needed. I'm going to slow it down. All right, cool. So we worked 2 days, then we would have 2 days off, and then we'd be back for 3 days. So 2 days off, third day back, or the first day back, set back up. It's a Friday, and here comes again. And I was just like, I just started laughing. And so I didn't even have to step out. He just like pulled over by himself, and he's like, before I got to the window, he's like, just write the ticket, just write it, just write.
I'm an idiot.
And I was always like, I don't know, like I always try to put myself in the shoes of anyone I interacted with as a police officer. Fortunately, there's a lot of police officers that become such because they get that authority when they put on the costume, right? Or the uniform, maybe is a better way to say it. But
I love that you said costume.
You can tell where I stand these days. But, by the time I got up to the window, he's like, just write the ticket. And I said, well, I think you've learned your lesson. He's like, I really have. And so my thing was always like, okay, you were speeding, but it doesn't look like you were wearing your seatbelt. Now, don't say anything, even if you're wearing your seatbelt. Don't say anything, because if you weren't wearing your seatbelt, there's a $25 fine, and there's no points and no insurance involved. But if I wrote you a speeding ticket, you'd have to go to court. You'd have to have the points. He's like, yeah, I definitely wasn't wearing my seatbelt as he's taking off his seatbelt, So I said, all right, well, we'll get you set up today. So like my daughters love the fact that I think that it just sort of humanizes the role of a police officer. Like, what did you do every day? They ask me, and so that's one from just like regular patrol.
Yeah.
Let me think. So, undercover, I had a really fun time, and it was like my daughter was just born as I was year 4, so like I was starting to think about getting out. But I have a ton of pictures. I just started posting some on LinkedIn. Like, I don't know where I'm going to go with this. Like,
yeah,
I had a mullet one time, and just because I wanted to have a mullet, and and so I did it, and I didn't tell anybody. And so I'd see like regular cops at court that know me for the past 10, 15 years. And you could just see him looking at me like, is this guy, is he for real? Like it was well before like the cool phase of having mullets these days, and mustaches.
It didn't come back around.
No, I just, so yeah, I think I've always was someone that zags when people zig. And, just, I like to do things. What happens if we did it this way? One of the big heartaches that I had in the police department, and the reason I think I like spontaneously or not even spontaneously, just sort of found myself in entrepreneurship was there's so many times I heard like, Hanko, we tried that once. We tried it in 1983. It doesn't work. And I'd say, but the internet exists now. Like, what if there's another tool we could use? And just every which way is just very sort of very stuck. And so, that I operated as best as I could within those walls. I was always ethical and moral. But the idea of like doing it the way, just because someone said that's the way you do it, it's almost like nails on a chalkboard for me.
Doesn't that come from the top?
It comes from everywhere. It becomes like the culture, right? And like, I think any organization that's large enough for long enough, I don't know if there is change that could be instituted, whether it's public education that I tried, whether it's police work. I think people just get so comfortable with it. And then it feels really scary, really threatening if you do it differently. When I was in the background section, I really pushed, like, I think we could go paperless. I think there's programs that we could do this. It could really speed up our efficiency of hiring people. Same sort of thing. We tried that. Too many things, too many different reasons we can't do it. So I, like, on my own, just was like, I'm just going to do it. So I used off the shelf stuff like Google Forms and whatnot.
Yep.
And made it to where I was doing my work in a few hours a week, and they were happy. They were like, great job, Ed. Like, you're doing everything we need you to do. And I was like, I'm working like 4 or 5 hours a week, and so I don't know. I don't know where my efficiency like thirst came from, but
sure.
Anything that's not efficient, I just sort of rubs me. But yeah, so that was a story and a half, I guess. But let me think if there's anything else that comes to mind.
So AI's got to be blowing their mind in the sense of like the efficiency that could be gained for them. Like I just sat through a presentation today that about blew my mind on procurement around AI and like I think you're right. I think it's, if you're not willing to, yes, it's a lot of work sometimes for that change, but man, the backside of that can be, like you said, you trimmed 30 hours off your week of paperwork just by thinking a little bit outside the box.
Yeah. Yeah. I told my wife the other day, if I had AI, I can't even imagine what I could do with it. I get an institution like the police department, it's just, you're doing a lot of rote things again and again, as far as like background checks and things. Um, so just like writing reports, that was my hardest thing, was to sit and like type out a report. But if I could just feed it my last 30
Yes.
reports I typed and be like, here's the details, do it for this person. Oh man, like I could have probably trimmed it down to an hour a week. So yeah, I'm fascinated by AI and where it's taking us. And I think we've even had a couple exchanges on LinkedIn, like whatever, however you call it, stupid ways or dumb ways you use AI, right? So I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that mostly came from people's fear. I wanted people to stop
Mm,
fearing it so much.
mm,
And I think the easiest way for people to start dipping their toes in is to do really dumb things that they know there's no sensitive information to.
yeah.
And just once you start with that and you realize its capabilities, even on dumb things, it's like, holy shit, right? And then your mind just starts going like this and exploding. So that was my whole thought process around it, because I have people at my own at SWF who are still afraid to dip their toes in, and I keep posting those things and talking to them things about. We're actually going to do a little class. I don't know how many participants we're going to get, but just trying to solve pain points that they have and say, hey, okay, well, use this for free
Yeah.
and this will help your family, whatever. Like I have this stuff in the fridge. What can I make for dinner?
Hmm.
Literally can
Hmm.
solve your problem.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I use it for at work now, it's a new industry, new area, new materials, new everything. But there are specific qualities about certain roofing membranes that just aren't back in my hand yet. So as I ride, like let's say we had a meeting together, so I rode as I'm in the car riding to the meeting with you. I'm just talking to it like,
Yeah.
okay, Brandon has a metal roof, but what are the challenges that a metal roof faces versus a TPO roof? Because he's considering PVC, but he really is, he's heard
Yeah.
about this, and it just talks to me like it's full out preparation. So I feel like
It's an
it's
onboard expert on
wild.
anything.
Anything. It's
It's
fascinating.
well, I
Yeah.
don't know if you've heard about agents yet, but it's only going to get. I mean, essentially, everyone in the world is going to have the ability to have a virtual assistant that is the smartest thing in any sector of anything you would ever need. So,
Yeah. Are you familiar with Chris Kohner? Yeah, he's on LinkedIn. I'll have to just ping you with his
yeah,
I just follow him. But he had a demo that he did last week. He got a hold of the $200 level operator that he
yep,
and just was asking it to do a variety of things. Message these people on Facebook Marketplace who have these listings, and ah man, I could just sit there and dive into that all day long.
yeah, yeah. I love. Well, you have a thirst for efficiency, right? So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
scratches this itch like
Right.
crazy.
Right.
So obviously we talked a bit about your police sector. Is there any skills or lessons that you took from that world that you're directly applying either into the leadership, entrepreneur, or the business world that you're now in? Like, do you call on any of those? Like the reason I thought if I was you and like when you're a detective, you walk into a situation, you're reading the room, you're reading everything in there, you're looking for clues, like that's kind of business development. Like you're reading, you're seeing what they're into on their pictures, their kids, blah, blah, blah. Is there any other skills besides that?
Yeah, it's so if I went back to the age-old response that I heard for 21 years, it's I can't do anything else. I'm just a cop. Um, and obviously was always swimming the opposite way. But gosh, it's fascinating how many things have happened in the past 7 months where I'm like, oh, this is just exactly what I've done 1,000 times before. Whether it's sitting out in front of an industrial building in York and finishing a phone call and looking over and seeing that the guy getting out of the Denali is grabbing the mail. I'm like, that's somebody. So let me pull in the lot a little further past where he's parked and then just time my get out and say, hey, excuse me, you look like you run this whole place. Yeah, I do. And so like, I can't say how many times, like that's what we would call cold cracking, right? If you're an undercover,
Gotcha.
and I'm just trying to break some conversation with you, I'm going to throw myself into, just insert myself right into your life as best as I can. Um, and there's obviously lots of tricks and ways to do it that are, very mirroring a business development. Like, hey, Brandon, who do you know that you could introduce me? Right? That's having a confidential informant that would essentially introduce me to someone that's doing something wrong. So there's just so many different ways that I see it mirroring the things that I've done. And like another thing is, I always joked when I was on patrol, I was like, I wish there was a tag and release program, because I love catching, I love finding the needle in the haystack, and then I got you, and then I just wish there was like literally like a tag, and like if somebody else catches you, they're gonna take you to jail, but I'm not gonna do it because I don't enjoy that part of it. So I love lead gen. I love, right, I could get on Google Maps and look at all the roofs that we could potentially go after, and what's the best way, what's my best avenue in. I've really gone down the rabbit hole on LinkedIn, just as far as a lead gen source and building a story there and using it as a 24/7 business card, and then seeing some really neat things develop. We had a lunch and learn at our company, and we were visiting another local company, probably 15, 20x our size. And it's sort of like, you've probably been in one of these, right? It's like two football teams on the opposite side of the room, like, sup with you, sup. Welcoming, not like it's antagonistic or anything. But my manager and said, "Hey, Ed, I think you're connected with a couple people. Why don't you join this lunch and learn?" So I said, "Sure." So before I went, I just jumped on LinkedIn. Who am I connected with there? Let me look what they did recently. Let me make a comment on their post. I saw one guy was in the military. So when those two guys walked in the room, they walked right up to me like, "Ed, what's going on?" We'd never met in our life except for LinkedIn. And so again, it's that like information gathering that a detective would do, right, to read the room, right? And then once we introduced ourselves to each other, it was like a whole different vibe, right? And so it wasn't two football teams on the opposite side of the room. It was like a collective, like, "Hey, welcome to our house."
Do you feel that your personal branding helped break that wall before you even stepped in the room?
Yeah, yes. And that's such a weird thing for me to say still, because
Why?
for 21 years, there's no competition in the police department. So if I suck, like, well, I'm in Lancaster City, like York City Police isn't going to come take our jobs. We could just suck, right? And so there's no reason, there's no compelling motivation to improve unless it's personal, or it's like something massive that happens, like a national incident. Like, oh, okay, I guess we could do it different now. So it just the for 21 years, I never needed Ed's brand. It was an internal process. I got moved or promoted or signed to different teams based on my personal stuff, but we didn't need LinkedIn. So when I retired and I did the school, I did some social media stuff on Instagram for the school. And when I got to Lancaster, I was like, oh, I think this LinkedIn is really something to this.
It's the bee's knees.
It really is. And, like I was joking with a guy I met at the Lancaster Chamber event last week, and he was a Marine. And I said, dude, how do we go from guns to LinkedIn DMs? Like, what happened to us? And he's like, it's great, isn't it? I was like, yeah, it really is.
So the reason I asked that question is because like I started my personal branding journey last year, 2024, and like the connections, just when you open yourself up to the world, it's amazing what you get back. And I don't think people realize that. And even just when you walk into a room, the amount of people who think they know you just because they know you're social, like obviously you can really put a different persona out there, but people sniff that out pretty quickly if you're not the same person when you're in the room.
Oh yeah.
But it is a game changer for people that you have never met before, and it just instantly lowers that tension.
It does. Yeah. I've said to my wife recently, like, it feels like I'm cheating. Like, it feels
Cheat code.
so, yeah. I just, just today, I found someone on LinkedIn, media, um, marketing kind of guy, has his own company up in Lidditz. And I've just made a couple comments, liked a couple posts. And he made a post today and said, "Hey, I found these results by doing this this outcome, this input. And I said, oh, that's really fascinating. I could noodle on this all day. And he's like, come on by the studio. I'm like, now if I just called him today, I was like, let me call him. Hey, buddy, I'm thinking about coming by your studio. There's zero chance he's saying come on by, right? But there's that credibility that comes that when you expose yourself, it's wild. I've been here 14 months in Lancaster, right? So I'll go to different events. I like networking. I like meeting people, and I'll go up and introduce myself. There's a CEO of a local company, and she's all over the place. And I said, "Hey, I'm Ed Hanko." She goes, "No, no, 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 no. I know who you are. You're Girl Dad times 2." And I'm like, "Geez, man, it really does."
I probably can tell you
in.
who you're talking about.
You probably could, and I didn't name because I didn't know, but
is it a May?
Yeah.
That's so funny. After that description, she would pick that out. That's so funny.
Yep. That's the personal brand, right? Like that just carries, right?
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
No, and that even that little piece just to pick out. Yeah, I mean, props to you for loving social events. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how anybody does that, but it is. You're right. It is a cheat code that not everybody figured out. I guess there's just the fear factor, right? Of jumping in. I don't want to put myself out there. Social media is everybody throws hate on it, and it's you kind of get out. You bring towards you what you put out. So if there's a voice and a thing that you're doing, you don't. I mean, I've gotten some hate, but way more on YouTube than I have on LinkedIn.
I've gotten more hate from people that know me than like random interactions, right? Like I'll get a screenshot from some old police buddies like nerd. And I'm like, okay, yeah, go deeper. It's nerdier the deeper you go. Don't worry. Like,
wait till you go to page 2.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And one, I think because LinkedIn, that's why I love it so much, because there's accountability, right? Yeah. There's no ambiguity because you know what I do? I click on your name and I see where you work.
There's no green eyes 29, right? Like that's what I love about it. Like it's a mostly real human behind every profile, right? There's a couple bots, but
sure.
I think it's I almost like it feels like it's unfair, like I said, like a cheat code. Like, and I encourage everybody. And when you get on, it's like when you're reading a good book and you tell everybody you're reading this great book, and you want everybody to read the book, but like I said, like people just are very comfortable. They like what they like. Mm-hmm. And I still I started July-ish. I'd made a couple posts before that. And I try and post most every day. I'm a very spontaneous poster. So
okay.
I'll wake up in the morning. I'll make some tea. I'll journal, do some meditation, whatever, push-ups, whatever I'm doing. And then I'll just like, whatever's just top of mind, I'm like, that's the thing I'm going to make a post about. And so I just enjoy the creation process. But every time I post, I ask myself, is this of any value to someone?
Yes,
like,
that's it.
Is it going to bring someone happiness? Yeah, that's it. But the thing is, I still, and maybe, I don't know if you still feel this way, like I still wince, like, okay, I hope so. Like it still feels very vulnerable to put, not for you. No, for me, it's like, okay, here we go again. Let's see what happens.
I do have to say, I think the spontaneous thing is fascinating. I will say scheduling your posts is another cheat code on top of it. I am out till the middle of April right now, currently.
Oh, wow.
So you can go 3 months out. And the reason I do that is because whenever I get that aha moment, I make the post that day and I schedule it the next available time. So I'm trying to do 5 posts a week right now.
Yep.
And to do that, like I brain dump either at the end of the week or per day. Like I had one, I was in the middle of my BD meeting today and I was like, I bet you people aren't doing this. And I wrote myself a little email on the side in the middle of that meeting. And then I got to the end and I created a picture and like did this whole thing. And then it's out in April sometime.
Yeah. I mean, I think we have a very similar process. Like when I'm curious or fascinated, which is 99% of my day, that's where I'm like, I'm just going to post again. I'm just, I'm getting closer to just like, oh, like, and so I'm not scheduling it, but yeah, I feel like it's a really fun way to share just that authentic, like my word for 2025 is authenticity, right? I want to be authentic. So when you meet me, I want you to like, I already know you because you put everything out there like that.
Yeah. I didn't think about this prior to our our conversation, but it's coming to me right now. Like, I think you are the definition of why you should hire for personality and a culture fit, not skill. Because you
Mm.
have proven to me through your multiple kind of reinventions of yourself that like you can probably learn almost anything, right? In the sense of the business world. Like, who would have said, hey, I'm going to go hire a cop on their CV for a business development role? But when you actually look behind the surface, the things that you need to do
Yeah.
are like second nature to you.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
you're a people people. Like that's what you love to do, which is perfect for business development because that's like a huge piece of you. You have to be really empathetic, but you're also a little detective. Like Denali's are higher class, right? So usually they're driven by owners, executive level managers, or something,
Right.
someone that makes decisions, which is who you're looking for,
That's
right? And
it.
then you're even timing your connection of like, oh, bumping into each other. Dude, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I go ahead.
I was gonna say my former manager, who's now our VP of operations. Hey, I've said a couple times, hey, thanks for taking a chance on
Yeah.
a cop tech. She's like, I knew it would work out. I knew like you would. And so I think it's a very similar thing where it's, um, I think there has to be an underlying like current of curiosity for life, right? And you have to love life. And I think when you have that, you could really put somebody in any position as long as they're just curious. They ask a lot of questions. I joke though that this is my first formal sales role, but I've sold real estate, I've sold education. And the best sale that I've had is, right, you've done something that you shouldn't have done, and now I'm going to convince you to tell me so that you can go to jail. That's a great sale, right? Like a roof is easy at this point, right? Like, come
That's
on,
so true. That's so true.
right?
Yeah,
And
I've said
so,
that on in other scenarios as well. Like you've probably seen some shit, right? And some of that has been really hard. So everything now is easier than that. Because the hardest times in my career were younger when I was traveling and doing all this stuff, getting yelled at. And now when I get yelled at by a customer, it's not as bad as that.
it's you've essentially like in like exposure therapy like yourself, right?
Shock
Like
therapy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's I think there's a ton of truth to that. Where um, have you ever read the book Comfort Crisis?
No.
You're not a big book guy, you said, right? But
No, but I am 2025. Yeah. I'm
that's your
into it.
jam. All right. Well, and this could be a good one for your company too. It just approaches how comfortable life is and how we
Oh,
now need to intentionally make ourselves uncomfortable.
I'm
So it's a
making a
good,
note about it. I'm just listening.
sure, sure. So, um, so it's around a story. So it's my favorite kind of book, and he goes on this long elk hunt, and he's talking about how we're designed to carry things as humans, and we don't do that anymore. We go from our 72-degree house to our 72-degree car to our work, and it's there's this concept called a misagi that is I think he borrows from a Japanese tradition where you intentionally set out to do something really hard, where he describes it. The first rule is don't die. And the second rule is you have to have about a 50% chance of failing at it. Um,
Ooh.
and so in 2021-ish, 2022-ish, my brother and I had read this book, and like, what are we going to do? We got to do something now. I got to put it into action. We can't just read the book. Um, so we came up with this idea, and you're not supposed to talk about your misogis, but I feel like as an educational thing, it's not a braggadocious thing like, hey, look at this thing I did, but to share with you, um, we decided to carry a kettlebell from DC to Annapolis, which is about 35 miles.
Yeah.
So we carried a 35-pound kettlebell. We just passed it back and forth the whole way. We just did it in a day, and it wrecked me. Like at one point, I'm laying on the ground. It's cold out, but the sun's out. I'm like, oh, it feels so good that it's a little teeny bit warm. And I was like, bro, just keep going. Let me be here. I'll probably be here when you're done. Like, come back and rescue me. He's like, get up, you got this. He's like, give me the bell. I'll carry it for the next. And he carried it for like 40 minutes afterwards because I was done.
Yeah.
But the takeaway from it is like, yeah, we had this like great thing that we get to always reference and talk about. Um, but there are so many times now, and I realized having done this like also through my career where today's really hard. Oh, my kid's sick and I still got to do this thing, but like it's not that hard. It's not
Mm.
carrying a kettlebell 35 miles in a day. Like, so it just gives you that really good perspective. So I don't know what your book club at work would decide to
They would love
collectively
that.
do. Yeah,
Hell yeah,
yeah,
dude.
yeah. It's a great book. I think
We're
you guys will
reading we're
love it.
reading Atomic Habits next, and then I'm
Uh,
gonna put that right behind that because that sounds like would fit our group perfectly.
so this, I mean, this is like now you're talking about like self-development Bible. Like I've actually covered it in orange duct tape to. I carry it with me all the time, and it's a book. Like I don't know if you made your way through it, but like you can open Atomic Habits to any page, and like it's like
Bangers.
instant fire. Like just
I
oh my
love it.
gosh, yeah,
I
yeah.
can't wait because we're on. Obviously, we're doing seven habits of highly effective people,
Uh-huh.
and they're just we're getting bangers out of that. Like, and the group's just like oh every Monday and Friday. So good.
That's
I
really
can't. No,
cool.
I've never read Atomic Habits, but I have heard from many people that is going to be so good. So the group's
Yeah,
pumped, and we got a couple extra members joining up. So I'm pretty excited.
very cool.
Moved to Lancaster, no job, no family around besides your immediate family, no connection, essentially starting from scratch. What gave you the confidence to take that leap, and what were the biggest hurdles you faced? Obviously, you said about just you like doing things that are crazy and fun, and you like jumping in. So, but what were some of the tough times?
Um, so the confidence came from a little thing that I noodle on that rolls around my head many days, which is I'd rather let me make sure I get it right because I say it like I'd rather have a be on my deathbed and have had a life full of experiences and oh wells than a mind full of what ifs. And that just that's
Banger.
it. That's it. And it just
Ooh.
like it just fuels it. Like, oh my gosh, like who cares if I fail? I started a school, I sold our house, I sold an investment property. I put a lot of money into starting a school and it failed, but it was the best decision I've ever made. And right, that helped me wrestle with my financial worry. It showed me that I'm okay. It showed me that it doesn't matter what hurdles are in the way, just pick one and go after it and chop away at it like you eat an elephant and it'll all work out. And so it's just for me just an opportunity. Like the hurdles, like it's almost like I wake up and I don't say out loud like what hurdles will I face today, but that's the like you have to have the up with the down, you have to have the yin with the yang, the black with the white, right? It all just balances out. I tell my daughters all the time, like to move to Lancaster, which was really hard. I mean, I can slow myself down and think about like telling the girls they're closing the school and just the bawling of eyes and like the letdown of like, ah, oh, daddy did that for you, did he? Like, the open check when y'all are ready for therapy on that one. I'll join you. Name the day. I'll kick in $20 and some ice cream. Um, but it brought to life this motto of like when you do hard things, you receive big beautiful gifts. And yeah, we're not like in a different country. We're 3 hours from my mom and dad where I grew up. But it's far enough where we need a new dentist, we need a new everything, and
Yeah.
so it's just like, oh, if we could do this, like, what else can you do? And then you start to get on that like that snowball just starts building momentum. Like, well, why am I afraid of that? Or why am I afraid to post on LinkedIn? And you're just like, who cares? Like nobody cares. They care, right? Like back to they, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. I went to the exact same thing when I decided to start this thing.
Oh
Because
yeah.
like and YouTube was the first part of that. I'm like, who am I? What do I know? Right now I have 3 channels and doing all this really dumb stuff. And I asked my mom about it and I was like, have I always been like, am I always this weird? And she's like, you never been afraid of people's opinions. So you just did
Mm,
whatever. And I was like, that
mm,
is such a superpower
it
that so
is.
many people get stuck in. And I'm so glad that I don't know where. I'm sure my parents, I learned it from somewhere and saw
Mm.
something, but a lot of people, the what ifs, man, begin with the end in mind, right?
Do you think that you're like, were you raised in a family that was emotionally intelligent?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't have major trauma or anything like that
Yeah.
as a child or anything. And like I remember processing things like in high school and being able to talk to my parents about that and process through that. So I would
Mm,
say, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that sounds like it.
So, yeah, which I think obviously was super helpful. I think as well, when I started traveling for work, I did that for 8 years. I met a lot of people
Mm,
across the country. So I had to, and every time I went to a new location, it was a new team that I had to learn how to work with
mm,
for a 6 to 8 month time period. And it was a restart every single time. So I
okay.
was learning people like, okay, don't do that. People hate that. People like that. Right. And you're just learning skills and watching people. And then I was the only actual permanent employee. So I was constantly having to work with teams that usually work
Mm,
together. So it's like you find ways to collaborate very quickly because you
yeah,
need answers. I need to get things from people that they don't necessarily want to tell me, and because that's what the customer's asking for. So, and not have
yeah,
them pissed off at me.
yeah. It sounds like I would like in contrast. I think I grew up in a family that I always knew I was loved, but it wasn't ever communicated. So I didn't have language behind it. So when you do have language behind it, you're able to process, like you said, hey, these things happen. Let me process through it. If you don't have language, it just sort of locks in, and you do care a lot about what other people think and say and feel.
Mm.
Um, and so I think through my journey of like meditation and journaling and therapy and every other which way to figure out like, let me crack this nut. Like, and I go back home now. I joke like it's going back to the laboratory. Like this is where I was made. Let me like. There's no judgment. Like I know that they love me. They're doing the best they can. But like, let me figure out why I always ruminate on this thing. Oh,
Yeah.
look at this. I never saw it. It was my water. I didn't know it was always there. So now I see it. Now I can sort of pick it apart and decide what I want to do with it off of autopilot. So yeah, it sounds like you had a really supportive nest there, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I definitely remember always being like, having long hair in high school when nobody else did, and other moms telling my mom like, why does he have such long hair? And I was like, that's what he wanted, right? Like I was always backed up for the really, not they weren't stupid, but just the things that I wanted to be. So I think that
Yeah,
also helped with
that's
not being
cool.
afraid to do whatever. So yeah, props to them.
That's cool.
With your constant evolution of evolving yourself into something new, how do you decide what ideas or what to jump into? Like, is it like, hey, Eureka, or like what pushes you or pulls you?
It, it I think I probably have for every one that I move forward on, there's 800 behind it that I'm like, well, what if I did? How about this? And so like right now, like the school was easy, right? That's a why. I
Yeah,
want this for my daughters, and this is a really neat education model that's going to help them become critical thinkers and be prepared for a world that I didn't feel prepared for.
mm,
So was it selfish? Was it selfish for me to start my own school? In some ways, yes, right? I wanted to do this thing, but it was for the opportunity to give them something I didn't feel like I had. Um, Real estate, right? You don't make a ton of money as a police officer, and so real estate was an easy way for me to say, like, well, what if I just work this one day a week? What could I do with this? So again, back to supporting my family. My dad worked 6, 7 days a week. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, so that nuclear family is really important, and that's very important to me. So that drives a lot of what I do. I'm working in a business development role and essentially building a business under a business.
yeah,
It's honestly my favorite place to
sure.
work because I don't have to think about cars, insurance, the production. I just have to go out and lead gen, build relationships, and find people that need the service and
Yeah,
not worry about anything else. So
there's a lot of freedom with that too in that role.
there's a ton of freedom, but it all drives right back to my why of we moved to Lancaster. I've agreed, head down. This is where I'm at. This is what I'm going to focus on. I'm not starting an ice cream truck. Don't worry, sweetheart. Like like.
Ah,
But yeah, I mean, especially like what's been fascinating in this area is that there's so much production and so many things that are made here. Never would have guessed that in 1,000 years. So now when I go around, oh man, the brain juices are just flowing. Like, oh, what if I use an Amish guy to build this thing and like so? But I'm just heads down, really enjoying building a book of business under this umbrella. I think during my hiring interview, I said I can be a Michael Jordan. That's okay. I've done it before and I'll probably do it again, but I really thrive as Scottie Pippen. Like I want someone else to take that initial high, profile position, but I will support and throw you ideas and really knock out of the park as a number two, or I'm not a number two in this company, but as a supporting role.
I gotcha. That's brilliantly said. That was really good. That was a good answer. If you interview like this, I can see why they hired you. Commercial roofing may not be the first thing that comes to mind when people think about exciting careers. What's something about the industry that would surprise people?
It's an avenue or an excuse to discover people's passions. So I can walk in if you need a roof and I can be like, yeah, you got a leak there. I'm just a commodity at that point, right? But if I say like, hey, what's this Hall Dat? What's that about? What's this gun on the wall there? Like, and this came from the career.
Don't you detective me, Ed? Don't you detective me?
but it's not detective to use it to my advantage.
No, okay.
I'm just like
curious.
Wildly fascinated that you care enough about that little gun thing on the wall to put it back there on display. Why? Like, what got you out of bed? Like, what stay weird come from? Like, so I just am thirsty for it. Like, so yeah, it's just a business development role or just a lead gen or a consultant type position. But I like to say, like, I don't really have a customer unless I can text them. If I can't send them a meme, they're not a customer. And I know not everybody wants a meme, but like if it's all over email, like, you're just a commodity. You're just the price that they went with this time. And so I have a client right now that is a fire department. And so like, I've just totally had the best time. Like, wait a minute, you're going to let a retired police officer rescue a bunch of hose draggers? Like, sign me up. Like,
yeah, they love
it's just so much, there's so much more to life than just doing what the job is. And so it's a real opportunity to discover people's passions, which I could nerd out on all day.
So based on what you just did to me, I can see why your background's just a blank wall with a mini split in the corner.
That's
you son of a bee.
That's right. I'll give you nothing. You will give nothing.
Oh, that's awesome. I saw one of your posts where you said customers just want their contractor to answer the phone. What's the secret to building, which you touched on a little bit of this, to building trust and strong client relationships in roofing and business development? You mentioned about like it's a real relationship build to you. Is there anything else that, like, how does that trust factor go from like you walking up to a guy outside of Denali? Like, how do you go about that?
I think it's interesting that the company that we did the lunch and learn with recently, this is a big construction company. And so they're dealing with subs all the time. And you probably deal with it all the time. And it was an aha moment for me because they had a lot of questions about, well, how do you guys run your subs? And what subs do you use? And I was like, man, show me where they hurt you. Like, it was just like, oh, like, here's something that's a real big pain point that no one talks about. So yes, we're going to fix your roof, but really they could care less about the roof and they care more about the process. Like, well, how's it going to go?
How mature are you?
How are you going to treat me? Like, and so I love just finding the other pieces of the puzzle. Like, it's almost like, hey, I'm going to tell you this, but the truth is actually 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers deep. Have you ever done the 7 layers deep exercise by Dean Graziosi? You essentially just ask and it's hard to do it on your own. Like, you would want your spouse to do it. Like, Brandon, why are you ahead of SWF? Oh, because it provides for my family and XYZ. Like, so you ask the same question, why?
It's almost like 5 whys just going to 7.
That's it. Yeah, and the first 3 or 4 come from the logic, and then finally you get to some emotional heart stuff.
The deep hurt stuff.
Yeah, and these subcontractors really hurt these guys, and I was like, okay, I see what's going on. So I see what you care about. So being able to, our owner founder Josh Moser, he's got this line that he signs every email with. 100% customer satisfaction guaranteed. And so I like, coming from the police world, I'm like, you don't want to put that on your thing. Like, you know, and so we've had some conversations about it. I said, so essentially you're at war with 99%, like all those 99%, that's unacceptable. We're aimed for, and he's like, yeah. And even during the hiring interview, he said, uh, we sat down and he just started rapid fire. Here's the questions. And I was like, in my head, having just done career coaching, I'm like, I'm just going to be a commodity again. So I've got to finish a response with a question. And I just said, where do you see your company in 5 years? Just, let me just break it up a little bit. And he sat back and he put his pencil down and I was like, well, I don't know how this went. I think that was the wrong time. And he said, this is a mission. This business is a mission to serve. And I was like, in a roofing company? And just more and more that I saw the culture, the way they approach safety, it mirrored what I was so used to in the police department from the ethics and the morals standpoint. And I don't want to jump. I don't want to find something for 2 years and then go do something else. I did 21 years at a place, so I want that type of opportunity. And when I found commercial roofing, it was like, okay, I said for the first few months to my wife, like, I think this is legit. I think this is real. Like, being a detective, maybe I asked a bunch of people, like, what's the real deal here? And they're like, no, Josh is that kind of guy. And so, just really neat to find something that someone is so passionate about and, get behind it, right? Get on that rocket ship and contribute how I can. And, it's just a really fun opportunity. Our theme for this year is grow better. I'm like, it's not, X metric or X revenue. It's just grow better, and it's like,
Wow.
all right, I'm down for it. Let's do it. So just really, it's approached differently. It's really a relationship business, and sign me up for that. I could do that all
Yeah.
day.
I've never met Josh, but I obviously know quite a bit about him. He was pretty good on LinkedIn. And he's slowed down a little bit. I don't know if he posts as much as he used to, but I've heard a lot of people who know him. I'm actually going to be on a panel with him, I think, around culture. I'm very excited to meet him and kind of pick his brain because I've just heard so many good things about the company you're working with, Moser Roofing, and it's just like it's all of those things, like you just said. It's all of the peripherals that not everybody pays attention to that I think he takes very serious, like I do, and I really appreciate that when I have a deep conversation with him about it. Love that.
Yeah, are you? Is it with Ruby?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. She was telling me about it. That's awesome. So one of the things that happened, and for me, like, not as a business owner, having had a business before, was just sort of blown away at the way it was handled. We had our safety is paramount in roofing, and even as a sales rep,
Yep.
I'm
You're in it.
I'm signing the safety stuff on day one. It's preached day in and day out, and so it's just been expressed in a very similar way to the police department, right? Five rules of firearm safety, cardinal rules, right? Never point a weapon at someone unless you're willing to
Yep.
shoot. Just goes on and on. And I saw the same thing transpire, and that's like, I kind of keep pinching myself, like, I guess this is it. Like, and they ended up having to let a few guys go because of some safety stuff. And at the next safety meeting that we have every 2 weeks, the leadership team, it's just the way they approached it was, I thought it was going to be like, well, we give you this and there's this, and we ask you to do this. It was 100% ownership. It was very Jocko. It was very like extreme ownership. Like, how did we fail you? Because yeah, there was a safety violation, but how did we drop the ball? And I was just like, again, like, this is a roofing company. Like, all right, let's do it, guys. Let's go change the world with roofing. So it's really neat. Yeah, I think you'll have a great conversation.
Yeah, he sounds fascinating. Leadership styles in the three different sectors you've been in. What type of leadership has your leadership approach evolved at all, from police to running a school to what you're doing now? Or do you see, or using a lot of the same similarities?
I think one of my primary leadership mantras is, you can't serve anyone else before and only if you serve yourself. Very much the
Woo!
oxygen mask, analogy, but it goes more than that. It's like, I think that if you haven't served yourself, if I haven't served myself, my hope in coming to this is that I can deliver value and that we can have a great conversation and maybe, wherever it goes, right? I can't control that, but what I can control is that I can come and be authentic and deliver value and be 100% here mentally and having a conversation. But if I'm here and I haven't served myself, I'm then waiting for Brandon to validate me. Oh, Ed, that was a great thing to say. Oh, Ed, that was a banger. Like, yes, he likes me. Um, that's a transactional conversation, right? But if it's transformational, if I've done my work and you've done your work, then we can really have that transformational conversation where I'm not hoping you're saying something. You're not saying, this is the best podcast I've ever been on, Brandon. Like, it just becomes two people like with good energy and good vibes. And like it, so a leader is someone who has to first serve themselves. And that's my mantra. That's what I try and do every day.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I guess it goes along with being the best version of yourself, right? And you can actually help others if you are. That's
Absolutely.
really good.
Yeah.
You said, I love life and think it's sad more people don't. What's your personal philosophy on finding joy and fulfillment, especially when life throws challenges your way?
I continually find truth in the statement that life is always happening for us. I think of life as waves, and you can either choose to try and surf it, or you can get crashed by it, but another wave's coming. And so when it's a hard day, when you have something that's challenging in your life, tomorrow's coming, and it's the whole this too shall pass. But for every down, there's an up. So it's almost like I find things that are hard fun because it's like I can't wait to see what this is gonna yield. It's just being fueled by curiosity of what's to come, not being. My wife and I were both raised Catholic, and we're married Catholic, and well, I don't know, like maybe in our late 20s, mid to late 20s, you're like, I'm not sure. So we just started questioning some things, and we tried a bunch of different avenues. Let's try this church. Let's go to this place. Let's do this. And as smart a woman as she is, about 3 years ago, she said, "What if our religion was just love and acceptance?"
Woo!
Like, all right, let's do it. And so we picked it apart, and there's really no downside to it. And so if you just love and accept life, you're never rigid. So it's like if I'm having an argument with you and I'm throwing stuff back at you, then I'm rigid. I'm not accepting. If I just let it come, or I walk, like, you're going to peter out really quickly. And I wasn't the cop that was like, oh, I'm going to fight Brandon. Like, here we go. Like, I would do everything in my power to not fight you. And it was pretty effective. I came from, like, my family love language is sarcasm. And so, like, I could talk my way out of most everything.
Yeah.
And so I think you just, if you're accepting and you're not resistant, life becomes so much easier, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, I resonate a lot with that. I think the rigidity of organized religion is a struggle for me
Mm,
because I think that's what, like, as soon as you start talking about groups, I don't understand how that formulates what you're trying to do. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just assume yours is right, like, because there's plenty of people who think theirs is right. And I think the
yeah.
rigidity is what really, I love that. That's really good.
It
Hmm.
works everywhere too. If you were the staunchest of, a religion affiliate, I would love and accept it. That's cool. That's awesome. I love that you believe so powerfully in that. Like, that's it.
Whatever
That's the end
makes
of
you
the
happy.
conversation.
Yeah.
Like, there's no resistance. So it
Yeah.
just makes life, again, it's like a cheat hack. Like, oh, life is easy if you're just loving and accepting.
That's really good.
There's parameters there, right?
Sure.
Like, but even like if you take it all the way to the extreme, like, whatever, like crimes against another person or crimes against children, like, I don't I don't love and accept the fact that that's happening to a young person, but I can love and accept that if you or I walked every step, and this is a hard one, but if you walked every step that that person had walked, you likely make that same choice that they're making. So that just gives me a lot of empathy and like understanding of like, oftentimes it's not a decision. They're not like, hey, you know what I'm gonna do today? I was gonna eat a cheeseburger, but instead I'm gonna go rob this store. Like, no, if you had walked every step that they had walked, you too would probably do that action. So, um, yeah, but it goes back to accepting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So you've reinvented yourself multiple times. What is on the horizon for Ed? What is next life 2.0 for you? Or are you super happy, or do you have still the entrepreneurial bug that's biting at you to do some side stuff? What are you thinking?
So it's my my current like daily journaling is like, how can I excel in this position as quickly as possible with the most amount of efficiency as I can, and build a flywheel that feels effortless, that's spinning itself. Um, because doing hard things, like starting and closing a school and moving your family, my gift to them now is for a number of years to really just hone in and be stable and not
Chill
have,
out.
yeah, relax, dad. So, but it coincides with this other idea that I came up with, which is I'm never going to retire. Now that doesn't mean that I'm always going to work as hard as I'm working right now. I'll have seasons through life, just like everything. But when I took away this idea that like, oh, there's a date, or oh, there's an age, or oh, there's a number I need, like it makes life so much easier. I'm just going to do what fuels me. And so right now, this is really fueling me. And I wake up every day passionate to do this. But there's a
Because it's
season,
not like
right?
work.
No, it's never work, right? Yeah.
That is brilliant. Damn you, Ed.
Yeah, yeah. It's like,
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Man, that would really help some people get out of some anxiety right there. Holy smokes.
right.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
in the same boat. I have all these hobbies that I'm passionate about and I love doing. So that's my plan when I'm not doing what I'm doing. Right. So
Hmm.
whenever that happens to be a full time thing, then I'll have other hobbies that aren't so job oriented, right, in that space. But I'm
Yeah,
just,
but you'll still be creating, right?
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah,
Whatever it needs
yeah.
to be. 100%.
I
Yeah.
think, I think, I think the sadness that I see in people is that they forget that they're designed and put here by whatever background, whatever story we want to tell ourselves, to create versus consume. But we're in a society that consumes, consumes, consumes,
Yeah.
and that's where the sadness comes in, because there's nothing out there that's going to fill the hole. Nothing. Like, I don't care who you are, what you can buy, right? Like, take a look around. Like the rich oligarchs, right? They're not happy, right? They're figuring it out just like you are. So it's when you take that away, and life becomes a little bit easier.
That's why they call it death scrolling.
That's right. Right.
So let me ask you one last thing. Is the 1 million push-up challenge another version of the kettlebell 35-mile challenge?
Yeah, just a really long one that my brother and I went down on. And
So what do you do, and let the people know? I saw you're at like 518,000 or something like that.
yeah, there's seasons to everything, right? So if I started in 2017, I started just like everybody else. And if you saw me, you wouldn't be like, "Dang, Ed's jacked." Like, I'm not jacked. Like,
Jacked
I
and
always,
juicy.
yeah, that's right. Like, I'm not like any special for it. There's nothing of that. But it long ago like stopped being physical, and now it's all mental, where I'm like, I don't want to do this. And I'm like, but I said I'm going to do this. And so it's this conversation with myself of holding myself accountable. um, I started like literally one push-up. I was that guy that could do one push-up. um, and my buddy at the police department, they paid us to work out, right? But I'm so busy, I got a real estate business, I got kids, da, da, da. He's like, why don't you work out? I'm like, I'm so busy. Look how busy I am. He's like, they pay you to work out. And I was like, yeah, you got me. So I just started like doing little things. So I do 500 push-ups a day, and
Wow.
people are like, yeah, that's what I get, right? But I'm like, it's sets of 50, so 10 sets, and it altogether takes about 3 to 4 minutes a day, right? It's not like in the thing, it goes back to the efficiency. I don't have to go to the gym. I don't have any excuses. I don't have to wait for a buddy to show up. I can just, and I'm that guy. I've done them in the grocery store. I've done them on the sidewalk. I've done a car trip. We stop. The kids got to go to the bathroom. I'm there doing push-ups. So it's just I don't know, a fun way. Like I like doing things that zag when other people zig. So I said, well, what if we just did this? And I encourage people all the time, just do one. Like, and then find someone you can text. Find someone that can hold you accountable. Hey, did you do your one? Just send. My brother and I, for years, it would just be a number back and forth. And it wasn't like a bravado, like, I did more than you. It was just
accountability.
I did mine. Did you do yours? And sending back a zero is not fun. So before you put your head on the pillow tonight, do one push-up, and then do that for the rest of your life, and you'll thank me time and time again.
I mean, sets of 50 is no joke. So when I was doing kind of my own personal push-up situation, I would always do them. I'd make myself do them after I'd go to like take a pee, right? So it was my constant reminder of like, so I wouldn't forget. I was like, okay, I went to the bathroom, now I have to do my push-ups. So that was my
not in the bathroom, right?
No, I would do them in my office, but that was kind of connecting it to something to make myself remind it. And now I have a routine that I'm doing outside of that. But that's 50's that's a bunch together, man. So props to you. 50's not easy. I could do probably 30 right now in a row, but 50's no joke.
It's wild to me. Like, so Christmas time, I really like I've done it for a number of years. So October comes and I hit my goal for the year, and I'm like, done with these. And then it's just every day I'm fighting, like, get down and do some push-ups. So this year I've tried to do a monthly goal rather than an annual goal. But I'm totally with you on the habit stacking of do it around something. Every time you walk through the door frame, do this, say this, affirm that. But if I take a 2 weeks break on push-ups, I get back on the floor. It's like I've never have I done these for 7 years? Like, what is going on? So yeah, it's humbling, right? And so
totally is.
Again, if you saw me, you wouldn't be like, that guy.
He does 500 500 push-ups a day is I thought 100 is hard. Now I feel like a complete slob.
But you're not, because you just haven't done 500. That's all. Like, and you'd get there just like I got there. So
You're proving to me that anything's possible, Ed. That's what I'm taking from this episode.
Honestly, Brandon, honestly, as long as you try it, right? It's what they told you when you were a kid.
Yeah. I'm going to assume you're a massive reader as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, I'm a big audiobook. I bought the Atomic Habits, because it's a Bible I carry around, but I worked in Virginia, lived in Maryland. So that was an hour and a half each way every day for forever. So
I just books in that.
Just crushed them. But then I realized, it feels, it's sort of like candy, right? Like, I can read another book, but you got to do something with it. So since I moved here, thankfully Lancaster has no commutes. People are funny. People are like, you got to leave 5 minutes early. It's bad traffic. I'm like, yeah, that's really bad. I don't know if I'm going to survive. But as I travel around a little bit, I'm getting more and more time behind the wheel with some books. But yeah, I love books. They're awesome.
Cool. That's amazing. Well, dude, I took a shitload from this. This was amazing.
Good. Man, I'm glad.
You gave me a lot of you dropped a couple of bangers in there too. You got a couple of hashtag bangers that I'll pull for little clips. But anything you want to promote, anything you want to talk about, anything you want everybody to know?
No, I'm happy to support anyone in any change, any effort that they're trying to make. If you need an accountability partner, if you want someone to text a number to, my probably best contact is my work email. So actually my work email is kind of long. I keep giving it a hard time. Can you guys grab a different domain? It's Ed_Hanko, Hanko at moserroofing-solutions.com. So
or we don't just have DM on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Oh, even better. Yeah. Why did I say LinkedIn? Yeah. Come at me on LinkedIn, because that's my jam. I'm there all the time. So happy to help and talk or meet new people. I love it.
I was actually going to message you today because I saw your post and I was like, do you want to reschedule? I saw that your daughter was sick and I was like, oh no.
Man, we all got hammered last week, but I took the weekend, and so yeah, we're back on our feet. But she just had needed one more day. So thanks for thinking of it. But yeah,
Yeah,
she's
yeah. No, I saw it and I was like, if he don't make it, I totally understand.
dude. That's the other thing, and you probably saw this about LinkedIn a ton. Like if you're posting on LinkedIn, or if you haven't, and you want to start, just start because there's so many people that see stuff and then don't do anything, and it's wild to me, right? Like how many people I've had one or two people say like, what are you paying LinkedIn to be in my feed all day long? Like, no, I just love it. So but there's so many people that take something away that don't tell you right away. So it's
Correct.
like, yeah, it's
I've
wild.
had a random, I've only had this happen maybe once or twice since I really started taking this seriously. And someone I've never met before that just didn't want anything in return, like
Yep.
zero, just sent, love following your stuff. I get a lot out of it and it's very helpful to me. Like that was it. I was like, holy shit. It was like the greatest
It's
message of
like,
all time. It wasn't like, hey, you want to sit on a round table? Like, the
right,
old
right,
sales
right, right.
pitch. But like, yeah, you are correct. There's a ton of people who will never engage, don't want to engage, but just take value. Like if you're providing value every single post and that's
Mm,
like your main forum, that's what, if I hear this all the time. And every time I talk about personal branding, if you are telling yourself I'm not interesting enough, every time you go, how did someone not know that? That's a post
absolutely.
because there's 100,000 other people who didn't know it either. Or if
Absolutely.
anything that the way Jonathan Core explained it to me was anything that pisses you off, excites you, or was annoying for the week, write all those things down because those are posts.
I love it. Yeah, yeah. Just and throw a couple selfies in there, and you'll be off to the races, right?
Yeah, I've actually been treating the photos as YouTube thumbnails for me. So I try to tell a story
Okay.
in the picture because I taught myself Photoshop for YouTube to build thumbnails. So
Mm,
I'm using that creativity to like put like not just a picture of myself, but then in the background, it's like an office setting or like fire or something to go along with the post because I
yeah,
haven't seen a lot of people do that yet. So I'm trying to be creative in like the picture telling a story itself.
I like it. Yeah, 1,000 words. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
exactly. Well, Ed, this
Yeah,
was freaking awesome. Sorry I kept you an hour and 11 minutes, but thank you for coming on once again.
thank you.
Moser Roofing Solutions is who you're helping. So if any industrial, any business, you guys are mostly commercial or all commercial, correct?
All commercial. If it's a flat roof, I'd be happy to come out and chat with you and find out what your passion in life is and fix your roof too.
Awesome. So, yeah, Ed Hanko on LinkedIn. If you want to talk anything we talked about today, obviously, Ed, I will make sure I let you know when this is going to drop. But thanks again for coming on. This was an absolute blast.
Thanks, man. I'm excited to send a couple people your way. This has been a lot of fun. So keep doing what you're doing. It's awesome.
Cool. Thanks.